Hey everyone, Grayson the Bard here, and welcome back to day 46 of the Hunt-A-Day. And today we are fighting a very cool monster, and one that a lot of people thought they would never actually see again, for reasons that I will go into in a little bit. Yes, today we are fighting Espinas. Espinas? Espinas? I'm not sure what the exact pronunciation is, but I've always gotten Espinas. Espinas is a monster that was released in the now-defunct Japan, China, and Asia exclusive MMO Monster Hunter Frontier, and was kind of their flagship. Espinas is kind of Frontier's Rathalos. And as with all monsters in Frontier, is one that a lot of fans thought we would not see again after the game went fully defunct and shut down in 2019? It was around Iceborne, I know that. And the reason for that is that for a lot of Frontier's lifespan, Capcom pretty much had an agreement with the community that they would not put Frontier monsters into the mainline Monster Hunter series. For anyone familiar with the card game Magic the Gathering, the Frontier monsters are essentially Capcom's reserved list. Monsters that they promise not to, in vigorous air quotes, reprint into the mainline series. In fact, before Espinas, there were only two monsters that originated in Frontier that made their way to mainline before that agreement sort of started to take place. One being only showing up in one game in the mainline series, Hypnocatrice, who I will probably try and hunt somehow later, and Lavazioth, who we took down in a previous Hunt-A-Day. And then when the game shut down, people just assumed that these monsters were lost forever. Cut to the release of Sunbreak, and one of the last trailers that Capcom showed off featured Espinas. And the community went wild. The floodgates in an instant were opened for the possibility of over 90-something monsters knocking on 100 from Frontier to potentially make their way into the mainline. And there are some really cool, really awesome options that I will try and hunt for this project at some point in the near future. I just need to figure out a good way to capture that material. But what a better place to start than Espinas, not just because I can easily record it on my Switch, but also because it is the flagship. It's the iconic monster of Frontier. He uses the standard Rathalos Rathian flying wyvern skeleton, but uses it in a very different way compared to them. He does not fly as much as he does sort of use his wings to propel himself backwards and more jump than actually fly. His main source of attacks are charging at the hunter repeatedly like a tank of doom and firing out globs of a really cool triple status poison fire that inflicts both poison, paralysis, and fire blight onto the hunter, causing someone who is not prepared for that to just have their health start to melt in an instant, while simultaneously being left open for a follow-up attack from Espinas. It is a terrifying combination of elements, and it is something that I really want to see them do more of in the future. More combined statuses, more combined elements. It is a really neat design space that I want to see them tap into. Outside of that, the fight is nothing too crazy. It's a standard flying wyvern hunt with more of a focus on grounded charging attacks. But with how hyper-aggressive Espinas is, it keeps you on your toes, and it keeps the fight engaging throughout the entirety of it. But I think the coolest thing about Espinas, besides the fact that he looks like a spiky, prickly pear cactus, is the fact that he starts the fight off asleep, and has really neat interactions that are unfortunately downplayed a little bit in Sunbreak compared to what they're like in Frontier. In lore, Espinas has an incredibly thick hide, something that is demonstrated by the fact that when he is not enraged, you bounce off of him constantly unless you are at purple sharpness. This means that not a lot of things can really get through to him, and he doesn't need to worry about being attacked. So he starts off the fight asleep, and even when you hit him for the first time, he doesn't wake up and start fighting you, he just kinda swats you away with his head and goes back to sleep and isn't worried about you. It's only when you do enough damage to really make him see you as a threat that he gets up and starts attacking. In Sunbreak, this is where the fight becomes your standard flying wyvern fight, but in Frontier, he will slowly lumber around for a little bit after getting up groggy and shaking off sleep, letting you get some hits in as he is waking up and realizing that there is something that's actually a threat in his nest. And will slowly amp up in aggression and speed as the fight goes on and he wakes up and is challenged by you, and I think that's really cool. And I understand why they didn't do that as much in Sunbreak, because the game is very fast-paced. It wants to get you in and out of the action. It wants to have that really hyper-fast, action-y, arcadey feel to it. And what I just described doesn't necessarily fit that vibe. But I think in a mainline game where there's more of a focus on the naturalism of the world and environmental interaction, I think those kind of Espinas dealios would go a long way to communicate to the player how much of a tank this thing is, and how much like the honey badger before it, Espinas just don't care. I really like Espinas and could talk a lot more about him, but I do want to make sure that this ramble goes less long than the actual hunt itself, so I'm gonna cut myself short here, but I think he would be awesome to see again. Aesthetically, I mentioned before that he looks a lot like a cactus, the green and, spiky thorns coming off of him with that, deep, reddish pink, resembling, a prickly pear. It's such a cool design. And I love how it takes that standard flying wyvern Rathalos skeleton and makes it look bulky, makes it look like a tank. But now the question of the hour, will Espinas be in Monster Hunter Wilds? I think he would be a good fit, but I'm going to say no. I don't think it's likely, one, because we just saw him in Rise, and I think if they're going to bring more Frontier monsters back, they're going to kind of use Espinas as a signpost, and bring back some of the more funky boys that I will try and talk about later. But I think if they do want to do that, they could also bring him back as a signpost, yes, Frontier is here, kind of dealio. And for that reason, I'm going to put him kind of, for returning in Wilds, I'm going to put him kind of on the lower end, maybe 3 or 4 for returning in Wilds. But I think now that the floodgates have opened, I'll say a 10 out of 10 for seeing him again in the future. The community reaction to him being in Sunbreak, whether you like the game or not, was huge and showed that people really want to see Frontier monsters in mainline again. Alright, my friends, that is where I'm going to be ending the ramble for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I sincerely appreciate every single one of you who hangs out with these. I've gotten some really nice comments on these videos, and it's made me very happy that I've continued to do this. Please stick around to the end of the fight if you can. I sincerely appreciate it, and it helps out with YouTube's whole song and dance. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Don't if you don't. And until next time, I'll see you next time.